In 2004, Elon Musk leads a round of investments for a company called Tesla Motors. Eventually, he himself invests about $6.5 million and joins as chairman of the board. We all saw what happened after that.
Electric car maker Tesla.
The Tesla chief, Elon Musk, 2,000 Teslas arrive here at Port Melbourne every month.
If the stock continues to rise, Elon Musk could be in for a very big payday.
But what we didn't see is that around the same time, all the way on the other side of the world, another millionaire buys a small car manufacturing company. And this company, 20 years later, has surpassed Tesla to become the largest EV manufacturer in the world. Who is this underdog that no one saw coming? Welcome to White Metal. This is the story of BYD. In 2003, Wang Chuanfu was running an extremely successful battery manufacturing company called the BYD company. This company at that time was the largest manufacturer of nickel-cadmium batteries in the world, accounting for a whopping 65% of global production. But Wang wasn't satisfied. After raising money through an IPO in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, he decided to acquire Xi'an Qinchuan Automobile from a state-owned defense company. He wanted this company's manufacturing capabilities and most of all its automotive manufacturing license, which wasn't easy to get back then. His dream was to build the #1 EV enterprise in the world, a dream which eventually even Warren Buffett would bet on. But there was a small problem. BYD didn't really know how to make cars. In fact, the first car they ever made in-house was so bad that it was scrapped right at the prototype stage. It is said that Wang himself smashed the car with his own hands. 100 million Chinese yuan all down the drain. Eventually things fell in place and BYD sold a number of cars in the next few years, like the F3, which looked exactly like the Toyota Corolla, F6, which looked exactly like the Honda Accord, F0, which looked exactly like the Toyota Aygo, S6, which looked exactly like the Lexus RX, and the S8, you're not going to believe this, looked exactly like the Mercedes-Benz SL Class in the front and the Renault Megane CC at the back. You see, a big part of BYD's strategy was to reverse engineer the competitors' cars and offer them at lower prices. And it worked. By 2009, they had 2 manufacturing plants and an R&D center in Shanghai, and they sold more than 400,000 units that year. Of course, their competitors weren't very happy about this. Some companies even accused BYD of stealing their designs. And when the matter went to the courts said, let him cook. And Wang, of course, claimed that they only used the non-patented technologies from other companies. But let's be real. There's only so far you can go doing stuff like that. The automotive market in China was extremely competitive, with over 100 domestic and foreign players. And BYD simply couldn't keep up. Their cars were cheap, and it showed in their poor quality and fit and finish. And it didn't help their brand image either, since they were already known as one of the copycat companies in China. They were way too focused on increasing production capacity and sales growth. And as a result, a lot of car dealerships on their network started withdrawing. They kept reducing their sales targets and still couldn't meet them. And at that point, Wang felt a major revamp was needed. So he decided that for the next 3 years, BYD will exclusively focus on resolving their quality issues and improving their dealership relations. Up until this point, BYD had made some headway in developing hybrid and electric vehicles, like the F3DM, which was a plug-in hybrid version of the F3 and sold only as a fleet vehicle to local governments and other organizations. The E6, which was sold in limited numbers in the United States, again as a fleet vehicle. And the K9, which was an electric bus that BYD supplied to the Wuhan government. So after 2009, when the Chinese government adopted the new energy vehicle policy, it sort of gave them a new life. This new policy essentially showered money on consumers and manufacturers of electric vehicles, more so if their batteries were made in China.
Until recently, the idea that electric vehicles would make up a significant portion of all cars on our streets was something for the future. Then China came along and thrust the future upon us now. It's achieved this with breakneck growth in the industry, fueled by government subsidies.
And BYD wasted no time. They opened up the F3DM to the public, which became the first ever plug-in hybrid electric vehicle to be mass-produced.
This F3DM vehicle was launched in China market in December 2008, and it's the first of this kind. It's the first of the plug-in hybrid vehicle in the world.
And in 2012, they replaced it with the Chin, which went on to become the best-selling plug-in hybrid of that year. As a part of their rebranding efforts, BYD decided to hire Wolfgang Egger as their design head. Wolfgang had previously worked with big companies like Audi and Alfa Romeo, and under his leadership, they launched the Dynasty series of luxury cars. This series included the Qin, Han, Tang, and Song, which were all names of ancient Chinese dynasties. It was the perfect blend of tradition and modernity. Finally, things were looking good. Sales were growing, money was being made. And most of that money came from government subsidies. In fact, in 2016 alone, BYD made $1 billion worth of subsidies from the government. But for how long? After 2017, the government started phasing out some of those subsidies. And by 2019, even Tesla had started making the Model 3s in their Shanghai Gigafactory. And this was bad news for BYD. There was a new kid in the block, and daddy's money was drying up. And as Wang put it, at this point, the goal of the company was to survive. Sales continued to go down, and the pandemic only made it worse. It was a tough time, and this is when Wang decided to bet on himself. BYD decided to go all in on electric cars and completely stop producing IC engines by the end of 2022. This allowed them to reallocate their R&D and production resources to EVs and position themselves as an all-out EV manufacturer. And then three things happened. BYD introduced the Blade battery.
In 2020, BYD launched the game changer, the BYD Blade battery.
At a time when EV batteries were notorious for being fire hazards, this battery could withstand temperatures of up to 60 degrees Celsius, heavily reducing the risk of thermal runaways. And the efficient design of the battery gave it more energy density, which meant more range. BYD's deep investments in vertical integration paid off. As both a battery and electronics manufacturer, BYD had spent the previous decade securing their supply chain. Pretty much everything you need to make an electric car was already made in-house. And this made them virtually immune to the supply chain disruptions that other companies were facing because of the pandemic. There was a global shift towards electric cars that gained momentum after 2021. People were more accepting of these cars, government policies were more supportive, and there was a pent-up demand that suddenly opened up after the lockdown ended. BYD found itself at the right place at the right time. Sales didn't just grow, they skyrocketed, peaking at 3 million units in 2023. Wang had finally, as the name of his company says, built his dream. While BYD saw an astronomical rise in its sales since 2021, Tesla, on the other hand, saw a decline in its sales for the first time in Q1 of 2024. Now, the Tesla leadership does not seem very concerned about this. They say it can be a cyclical dip between two growth periods, or this may be because of the Red Sea shipping disruptions.
Well, disruptions in the Red Sea caused by Houthi militant attacks are forcing ships to take longer routes around Africa. This is reducing available cargo space.
Or maybe it's just that people are not as excited about electric cars anymore. But the thing is, Tesla has found itself fighting multiple battles. First, there was the investigation by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which triggered a remote recall of pretty much all vehicles produced in 2023. Then the multiple lawsuits that are asking whether Tesla must take responsibility if the car crashes when it's in autopilot. And then there are all the build quality issues that are flooding the internet.
Can someone please explain to me the build quality of Teslas? This is a brand new Plaid. And I mean, look at the frunk. It's open and I'm tapping it and the thing wobbles like it's gonna fall off the hinges. It's unbelievable. I understand Teslas are pretty much, computers and they happen to manufacture vehicles, but The bits and pieces don't fit. Nothing's flush. Like, it looks like toddlers put this together during recess. Can someone look at the door trim? Oh my God, the door trim! I can't. Someone.
And if that wasn't enough, Elon Musk's polarizing reputation is slowly becoming a problem now.
The energy in this room is incredible.
Publicly endorsed Donald Trump to be the next president, who belongs to an ideology that categorically denies climate change, which is opposed to everything Tesla stands for.
We've had temperatures explode this summer. You may have learned that we broke a world record in the Death Valley, 130 degrees. But even in greater LA, 120 plus degrees. And we're seeing this warming trend make our summers warmer, but also our winters warmer as well.
It'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Hey, well, I don't think science knows, actually.
It's like a chicken cheering for the KFC. This has also led some European companies to reconsider purchasing Tesla as their fleet cars. With Elon Musk doubling down on building AI products at Tesla, like the much-awaited robotaxi, or spending millions to build the world's 5th largest supercomputer to train Tesla's self-driving technology, it is becoming increasingly clear that Tesla is positioning itself as a tech company that also makes cars, effectively making better tech than cars. Let's come back to BYD. They might have become the world's largest EV manufacturer, but it's not all rainbows and sunshine for them. They've been facing a lot of challenges when it comes to global expansion. The EU recently opened up an anti-subsidy investigation against them, amongst other companies. You see, Chinese manufacturers receive massive subsidies from the Chinese government, and this allows them to sell their vehicles at low prices as compared to the European competitors. And the EU thinks this is not fair. In fact, they've already implemented provisional tariffs, and the final rates will be decided later on. Even President Biden's administration in the United States has already implemented 100% tariff rates against Chinese vehicles. This is a part of a larger economic strategy to counter China's unfair trade practices. It's very clear now that the West looks at BYD and other companies like BYD as a threat to their local auto industry. But what about India? Believe it or not, BYD has been around in India for almost a decade now. They've been supplying electric buses to local governments and corporate fleets across the country. If you ever saw an electric bus, it was probably made at least in part by BYD. And in 2022, they have entered the passenger EV cars market. They also submitted a proposal to invest $1 billion in a joint venture to set up a manufacturing plant in Hyderabad. But that proposal was later rejected by the central government, citing security reasons.
Now, in a major setback, India has rejected Chinese EV maker BYD's proposal to set up a $1 billion plant.
But in 2024, the government of India announced a new electric vehicle policy to encourage more EV manufacturers to make and sell their cars in India. This new electric vehicle policy offered lower tariffs on imports of up to 8,000 vehicles if the company committed to making their cars in India within 3 years. Tata Motors and GTRI, which is a think tank, criticized this policy and warned that this might end up hurting the local EV industry by allowing these heavily subsidized Chinese companies to enter the Indian market and undercut the prices of Indian brands, just like they did in Europe. And looks like BYD is preparing to do just that. BYD recently registered a trademark for their EV hatchback, Dolphin, which is touted as their most affordable car. And by doing that, they plan to enter the exact market segment that Tata now dominates, with 69% of market share. Now, as long as BYD is making their cars in China, it's going to be hard for them to undercut Tata's prices. But with the new EV policy, it's only a matter of time before they start making their cars in India. And once that happens, can Tata compete with BYD? Can India compete with China on Indian soil? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this. And don't forget to take a look at our merch. See you in the next video.